Welcome, wrestling friends. It is the Gentleman Villain Podcast with William Regal. I'm Matt Kuhn, and of course, joining us is a star of the show, the head of the Blackpool Combat Club himself, Jumpin' Jim and Sparkles himself,
yes.
Mr. Regal. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good.
Let's leave this star thing alone. It's one of those things that once you start buying into your own nonsense, it's like a slow downfall from there. That's what I've always found with people. They start buying into their own nonsense and listening to people, oh, no, I'm just me. Well, just an old journeyman wrestler. That's what I am.
Well, I think that's what people like about this podcast, and that's what people like about you. And also what people like about several parts of your career, including what you're going through now.
Yes.
And with the Blackpool Combat Club. Let me ask you something, question. A lot of people have talking about adding members and if there's going to be new members and who would it be? And I guess, that's a lot for you to say on this podcast, but if you had to pick someone through history to be a member of the Blackpool Combat Club, who would fit in of anybody that you can think of?
Well, there's the original members, which was myself, Robbie Brookside, and then Frankie Sloan. This is in my mind anyway, because we were the three that came from Blackpool, from the Horseshoe Show Bar, which was how we got into the wrestling. And then if I was looking at it from the actual thought process of what we do and what we're trying to do, and this is I've said this before, this is a real thing for us. We sit and discuss different ideas about how we can better everything that we're doing and everybody around us as far as the talent. So this is, because some things are just about the people involved. This is to make sure that any wrestlers who wrestle anybody in the BCC get the best wrestlers to wrestle and have to and learn a lot of things that they're going to have to learn, that they're going to have to rise to the occasion. It's probably worth several hundred matches with somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, just to have one match with one of the people that is in. If you're smart enough to go back at the end of that match, if you're a young talent and you go back and then you watch it and you study it and you study the talent that you're in the ring with, which is one of the BCC, or you listen to the comments, or you come up and ask us afterwards, it's unfortunate byproduct of what's happened in the last 30 years. I'm here because I started with all really good wrestlers that had wrestled for years or were exceptionally good, and I slowly got better. Well, now you're expected to go to wrestling school and have a few matches and then be good. And yes, there are people that are going to do that, but if you look at even the more modern generation of wrestlers, they've had to hustle, they've had to work as many shows as they could. That they've all had to put a lot of time in and make the most of it, and that's why they're all in the positions they're in today. And that's including everybody, every single person in the BCC. So one of the problems now, okay, you turn up and you're either thrown straight on TV or you don't get to wrestle anybody who's a lot more experienced than you. I've only had that because I wrestled loads of people. From 18, I was wrestling the best people in Europe, Britain, and then Europe, and so forth. And even when I first began, the fellas I wrestled were all far better than me and knew what they were doing, and it had been passed down and passed down. Well, as a young talent now, what a lot, and a lot of the older talent in the last 30 years that have got experience, they end up wanting to wrestle each other. So it's very hard for young talent to get experience. Or you have a bunch of old wrestlers who some are, and are like me, and are quite willing to help, and then others do a lot of moaning and whining and back in my day kind of nonsense.
Sure.
So this is a real thing, and we just trying to build on what we've got at the moment and put a lot of time into Wheeler, but also everybody that wrestles us. That's the key goal, is to make the people who wrestle us better, because they've got
Absolutely.
to hang in there.
It's
If you're asking me about one person who I would have from any
Sure.
time, because I know he's the best that could help, would be Fit Finlay.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because a couple weeks ago I saw a tweet from a wrestler, and he said that this podcast was like a seminar, a professional wrestling seminar. And then we haven't talked about it when it happened, but a couple weeks ago, this young wrestler got a chance against Jon Moxley on Rampage. His name's Mance Warner. And you got a bird's eye view, and it was so good to see him on TV with Jon Moxley. What were your thoughts on Mr. Warner, watching him?
I was very impressed
battle?
Because he's got that whatever he's done and got to the point where people are knowing who he is. Don't forget anybody. I've said this before, but I don't know who can put up with my ramblings week after week. So I say I repeat things. Anybody in the last few years who's managed to make a name for herself in COVID, when there's not that much work going on, and unless you work for AEW or WWE or MLW or some form of where people are seeing you've had to try and make do with whatever shows are out there.
Yes, sir.
And is it GCW are doing their bit, and so it's people that have made a name for themselves, and the two that come to my mind are obviously Wheeler and Daniel Garcia. Well, Mance has made a name for himself, so that's one thing. They've done an incredible job to do that. The second thing is, now he's just got brought in and thrown on live TV against Jon Moxley.
Yes, sir.
So it's win-win-win as far as I'm concerned for everybody involved, and especially him, because he will have gone away from there with an experience that, right? And I was talking to Jon Moxley afterwards about, sometimes I never do, but it's and he doesn't. He's like, wow, this fella did incredibly well. Mance did incredibly well, and he just great. And I don't mind using this term. He said he's the kind of fella I'd wrestle every night of the week. So he's obviously figured out a lot of the things that we've talked about in previous podcasts. He's figured something out in a short period of time. I don't know how long he's been wrestling, but he's figured something out, because everybody, don't know what you were doing before COVID it and put a hold on a lot of things, right? So you've had to try and pick the pieces up and figure it out, and in the last year try and get your name out there and restart again, basically, for a lot of people, and try to keep in the game. So he went out on live TV and did an excellent job, made a name for himself. That's our job done. That's what the core of it's I know it's about us,
right?
But really it's not. It's about our opponents, because everybody who's been wrestling, who's actually wrestled anybody in the BCC has got more attention on them. So we're giving our you're getting thrown in the deep end, because you're having to wrestle champions, and you're having to wrestle Jon Moxley and Claudio and Wheeler now, and obviously Bryan Danielson. Now, can you imagine, as a young we talked about whenever it was, me again having to face Fit Finlay at 18, right? That's the same kind of experience for these people. It doesn't matter what they've done before. Oh, what? I've got a match I'm on live TV with with Bryan Danielson or John Moxley.
Yeah.
So wonder they don't just, we've had nobody yet, which is a great sign for the talent there.
You've had nobody yet, just leave.
Buggered off yet. There's time, and I know I've been around times in England, right? I've been out. We mentioned that one time with Fit the other. That was a regular occurrence. People would turn up, say they were on with somebody, who's out, but what they were just
right.
The nerves were too much, and you just don't see them again. Right. So that's I thought he did an excellent job, and it is, hopefully he gets more opportunities. But he made a name for himself in one night, and people that in this day and age is it's a great thing, and if he can keep capitalizing on that, wonderful for him. I'm happy for him. Good lad.
Absolutely. And it didn't take much luck to figure out that you would be a really good asset to the group we're going to talk about today, which is King Booker's Court.
Yes.
Mr. Regal, of course, King Booker's Court starts with Booker T, who you worked with in WCW. You talked about how those.
Do you know the story about it? There's a bit of a, stories over time, and I'm telling old stories, but they all lead to something. So I met. Well, this is going to lead into all kinds of stuff now.
Well, that's what we do.
Okay, so I used to live, when I first came to America, I lived in Marietta, Georgia, and next door to the apartments, a lot of wrestlers lived in this block of apartments called Le Park on Windy Hill Road in Marietta, Georgia. And next door to Le Park was Main Event Fitness, which was owned by Sting and Lex Luger.
Sure.
And we could walk out the apartment and just up a bit of a grass verge, and there was a hole in this fence, and you could just walk straight into the gym. And Sting and Lex were very kind to let any of us train there. Okay, so my wife had just come over. She was over. Yeah, she was over for the summer. She was only allowed, I believe they came in middle of 93. Is that correct? Or near the end of? My wife was definitely there, which my wife for the first 3 months.
93 sounds right.
Right. So in 1993, my wife and family were only allowed, because of visa issues, to come over for 3 months of the summer. So it was either then or I think it was the March of the following, in 94, she came and my family came and stayed. So it's got to be around. My wife was definitely with me. I'm walking. Booker's told this, and I've heard him tell this, where it was the opposite way around, where we were walking out and they were walking in. It wasn't. And I do remember this well. We were walking to go in, me and my wife, and out of there was just several steps, and out of the doors came Sid Vicious, and either side of him were Booker and Lash, Stevie Ray. Right.
Wow.
And they're looking now. We can get into a bit of Sid later, because there's a few things with Sid.
There's a lot of great Sid
stories.
And
I like Sid a lot. I really do like Sid. I'm going to say this, though, not when he was around wrestling, because he turned into something else. And a lot of people do that, and they have to do that.
Sure.
I have no problem with that.
It's dog eat dog, right?
Right. But we lived it again. He lived upstairs from me in an apartment, and we used to hang, by the pool, and he'd play with my kids and go in the pool with my. He's just a nice fella. But when he comes to wrestling, you have to do your dealings, however you do them. So maybe keep that in mind. Make a note, because this story might come in a bit later, or it definitely will at one point. So Sid is walking out with Booker and Lash. I have to remember to say Stevie Ray.
So Lash is what you call Stevie Ray.
Yes, because that's his name, and me and Lash have always got on and get on very well. There's just this particular first meeting, we've always got on. Me and Booker didn't, and what happened was, me and my wife were walking in. Now, here comes Sid. Now, again, I love Sid, but I don't think I'm anything.
Right.
We've gone over that before.
Sure.
But I also went through a lot when I was younger to get into this job. And at a certain age, I realized what's the worst you can do to me is beat me up.
Right.
I've been beat up that much, it doesn't matter.
So you're humble, but you're not
so
going to be intimidated.
I'm not intimidated about anything
Right,
or anybody. And that's not trying to sound tough. I don't care. Oh, well, okay, beat me up or kill me. And I'm not exaggerating there. I don't care. That's the thing that's got me through this, because there was one wrestler, particularly when I was 16 and 17, who made my life hard. And I don't begrudge him that at all. There's other things that he did at the time that I'm not so happy with, but we actually became friends, and I don't begrudge what he did, because he made me earn my spot in this. No different than going, if I look at it now, it's no different than me would have been going to the Japanese dojo or whatever. You have to earn your spot, and they have to know that you're going to stay around. And you have to, it was just a different day and age. This is pre-wrestling school days,
right,
when there was no way into this.
This is trial by fire days.
Yes, this is, so I was getting, it was just part of the initiation of getting through wrestling. So by the time I was 17, there was a lot of things happened. I got introduced to Marty Jones, who retrained me for the next 18 months. Now, Marty's a handful and can be a handful when it comes to, he will not back down to a lion. He's trained with Billy Robinson since he was 6 years old. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he'll not frightened of anything, or he'll fight anybody, right? So I was around him, and then him teaching me and growing up. And also I started working, because I was a scared little boy in the wrestling game. And although I was going through these matches and getting, shown the ropes, basically, it's a lot of stories, but these are all things that sort of happened in my teenage years. For whatever reason, at one point, I decided that I need to toughen myself up a bit. And although I'm getting, whether I like it or not, I'm getting toughened up in the wrestling. And I thought, well, what's the best thing I can do? I know, I'll go and work in a nightclub. And I just lied about my age and ended up working in a nightclub. Well, the first night on the job as a doorman in a nightclub, I'm around two really good doormen who, I could have been around two idiots, but I was around two really good doormen, Dave Beatty and Dave Secker. And they were good doormen. There's a difference between doormen and bouncers. They told me that on the first night. Doormen stop fights, bouncers cause fights. So they were very good doormen. They can do whatever, but their things to me were, number one, no runners, which means whatever happens, we all back each other up. Okay.
All right. No runners.
Right. Number two, we are doormen. We're not bouncers. Now, I know it's all bouncers now. Nobody knows the difference, but it was a deal in those days that they used to sort of put the doorman on the front door, so you're polite and can control things.
It's a customer service position.
Put the bouncers who like to, or shouldn't be anybody there to cause trouble, but put them in there. If you can control the front door, you can let in and try and keep out a lot of the trouble, so that people inside, if there is any fights, the bouncers take care, and then you all help. It's just a different kind of a mentality. So I was doing that. I was training with Marty. I was getting bigger, whatever else. And then I met Marty, being one of them. Why are you, letting anybody knock you about? Well, it's just part and parcel of what I'm doing. Because he was like, when I went and trained with him, he used to take me down and like put me in all these submission holds and that.
Right.
You know, he's Billy Robinson trained
Right.
and teaching me again. I'm working full time in this small company. On a Sunday mornings, I'm going for 18 months to train with him on a Sunday morning for 3 hours, and he's putting me through it and teaching me properly. So I'm having to all these things, but he's making sure I know that the wonderful fellow that started me, Bobby Barron, he should have gone to the Olympics and would have ranked very highly. Had an unfortunate accident. He was in a swimming pool. Somebody dove off the top diving board and landed on his head and broke his neck right before the Olympic trials.
Jeez.
So he ended up becoming a professional wrestler because of Dave Taylor's dad, and he knew a lot of stuff. Well, he'd always been teaching me that, but again, I'm 16, 17. I'm not big enough, strong enough. He's teaching me stuff and just things happening, right? Once you're around working in a club and you're not in this insular wrestling world, you're seeing real things happen. And you got to stop real fights.
Right.
So you realize, right, okay, I'm getting knocked about at work, and it's just part of what I've got to put up with for a couple of years to show that I'm not going to run away. And again, it's all over a couple of year period, right? And then I meet Dave Taylor. Well, I've met Dave Taylor, but he wouldn't speak to me for the first year and a half I knew him, because he just was the way he was. But once he sort of realised I wasn't going anywhere, you do realise you're now 6'3" and whatever. You do realise nobody can do much to you if you don't want them. I mean, he had that talk with me one day. All right, yeah. And so all these things that you're going through put you in a mindset of what's the worst that can happen to me?
Right.
Right. So I know that's a long but it's all things that have happened to me in
But
real
I
life.
think it bears some explanation why one would not be intimidated by Sid. You know, he's an intimidating guy, but you've explained it pretty well.
But look, and Sid, I hope you don't take offense to this, because I really like Sid, but Sid couldn't fight Sleep. I mean, he's just, you know, he's not a fighting man.
He couldn't fight Sleep?
No, you know what I mean? It's just not his, it's not his thing. You know, there's this.
Right.
I'll leave other people
for the other stories, right?
I'll let Jim Cornette tell him stories on his show, because that's what he does, right? But he knows a few stories. Well, I've got my own personal Sid story. Well, while we're on it, I might as well say it.
Might as well.
Right. Oh dear. So keep me on, because this is where we start, right? And then we go into all these stories. So when it was about well, I know it was 2 weeks. If you don't know, I don't know if we got time to go into this. There was an incident between Arn Anderson and Sid.
It's a pretty famous incident that most wrestling fans are aware of in some sense.
Right. Somebody might have the exact stats of this, but this happened. The thing with me happened a few weeks before that tour. I was on that tour when that happened, but I wasn't there because we landed in London. I rented a car because, again, my wife couldn't. This is the first year I was in WCW. This is September or October of 93. My wife's had to go home after the 3 months that she could spend in the summer. So I landed, instead of getting on the bus with everybody, I get in a rental car, drive to Cardiff in Wales. I'm on first match with Ric Flair, which was the first time I wrestled Ric Flair. I think this might be about the September time, if I remember rightly. No, maybe beginning of October. But somebody will know better than me. It's the only one of the few ever times that I've asked to leave early. And so I was on first with Ric Flair, which was mind-blowing. I'm stood there across the ring from Ric Flair in Cardiff going, I was working in a tent in Germany last year. Or, you know, I was working shows. What am I doing across the ring from him?
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, it's mind-blowing because I've watched a lot of Ric Flair and I've done you know, I think I've told you this before, that series of matches he had in '89 with Steamboat, I used to put those on while I did my 1,000 Hindu squats.
Wow.
Because I thought if I can, because they were going at such an incredible pace, I thought if I can keep doing this, I can keep up with them. This
Sure.
was just things that I did. I get home because it was when I was working. If this is whenever I was working in England in '89, or whenever those matches, we finally got them. See, that was it. We didn't see him. My friend I mentioned before, Peter Thompson, he got the tapes, and once I got that, I'm like, wow, this is first of all incredible match. But then, oh, that gives me some because I'm always training and doing squats. But now I was doing 2,000 mile a week in England. We had my youngest son who'd just been born the year before. I was only in England for a short time before I was back. Every time I was back in England, I was only there a short time, and I was back off flying somewhere else to be, because from '88 till I came to America in '93, I wasn't in England much. But when I was there, my wife had still had a job. She'd go. I'd drive back through the night, get back home at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, so she could leave to go to work at 5:30, so I could look after my son until she got home from work, and then I would drive off. Or sometimes we had to go to my wife's mom's, and she would look. I would drop my son off, so I could go off and wrestle somewhere if I had to, depending what time I had to leave. If my wife hadn't got back from work,
Sure.
so I would put this match on, or a series of matches, depending how quickly I wanted to do them, and pace myself, and I would do my Hindu squats, and it was like 300 regular and 700 jumping ones while they were doing their match, right? So I've seen a lot of Ric Flair and different times, but this was that's one of those things that really sticks to me. That was like a like there was a time when I heard Bob Backlund did an hour step ups. So on the days that I used to do squats every other day. On the other day, I used to do a minimum of 45-minute step ups. So I consider myself and I always was. I was doing that until the very end. I might not looked of good because I was getting all kinds of injuries and whatever else, and then my heart wasn't working right. But I always did my squats or I did step ups. So my legs, because as a young wrestler, any wrestler, sometimes all you've got left is your legs. And if you haven't trained your legs enough or got good condition in your legs, you're going to fall over. You can be blown up, you can be hurt, you can be knocked senseless. There's a lot of other tricks I can teach you. Like just you've seen that clip of me left foot forward on everything.
Love it. Love it.
Right. Why is that? Left foot forward and bring your hands up to fighting position, because you at least look like you're a fighter. You're in fighting position. If it's mental, if every roll you do, every move you do, you come up and put your left foot forward and just bring your hands up, you still look like you're in the game.
You're not going
If
to hop
if
to fight.
you look like you're in fighting position.
Yeah.
If you come up and you square your feet aren't in that position, you're blowed up, you whatever, you're dead in the water to your audience. You don't look like a fighter anymore. So when there's a lot of things we can get. Let's do that, and another thing of why lots and lots of roles. There's a lot of things, but there's little tricks like that that I was taught that you pass on, that you learn. As long as you come up and you got good legs, you can keep going in this. Even if you blow it up, your legs will carry you. You've got to train. And my particular thing was doing Hindu squats or step ups.
Right.
And I come up, no matter what's happening, I can be blowed up, I can be out of wind, I can forgot I have no idea what's happening. I could just be done in, or having one of those days when you're wrestling and you're not well or whatever. But if my legs will carry me, and I come up and I just get off the floor and I just bring my hands up and my left foot goes forward, I still look like a fighter. If I don't, you don't. That's we're getting, again, this is why these topics, we start with a thing. And so
Sure.
Again, backtracking, I know I've watched a lot of Ric Flair stuff, so I'm wrestling Ric Flair. As soon as I've finished, I've asked, and believe me, it used to be a big thing for me not to leave till I watched all the matches. And I still suggest everybody who's interested in this, watch everything, especially the shows you're on, because you don't know what you're going to, you should know. It's your job. You're a professional. You should watch. It shouldn't be a thing that you should be made to watch. You should be watching, right? Knowing what's going on.
Sure.
But anyway, I asked, do you mind if I leave? So I jumped in the car because I was on first. And in fact, if I remember rightly, Rick asked me about it, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna go home after this." And he went, "Oh, I'll get us to go on first," because there was everybody else, Vader and everybody else. You know what I mean? Like it's Sid, and so he
Right.
said, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" He said, "Because we weren't supposed to be." He said, "No, go on first, then get home to your family," because it was about another 4-hour drive up to Blackpool. Because the next night they were in Blackburn, which is 20 miles from Blackpool. So it was a perfect scenario for me to just go and spend a few hours, like late night, with my
Right.
wife,
Right.
and spend the next day with my children, and then back off on tour and won't see him again till Christmas. This is just so I can spend a couple of hours.
It's
So I've
crucial.
left.
Yeah.
Well, the incident will go, and it's a story for another time. There's an incident afterwards. They left on the bus. They got caught in a traffic jam, and it ended up with an incident with Arn and Sid. That's their stories to tell, or I might get into it a bit. So 2 weeks before this, why I've laid the table with this story. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before this, we were in Kansas. Now, I'm not sure if it was Kansas City or Kansas. There's.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And there was myself and Dundee and Sid and Colonel Parker. And we were sharing a car. Now, we're going to go and get something to eat. When we've landed, we've gone to the gym, we've come back, we've showered. We're going to go and get something to eat, all 4 of us, and then come back for a bit, and then go to the show. We go and we're sharing a room, me and Dundee. We didn't for long because there was a lot of things that I'll get into at a different time, but I stopped traveling with Bill after that tour to Europe that happened in 2 weeks because there was a few things that me and him didn't get on about. So, but for a short time I was traveling with, and there's things I found out and different. It's not for this podcast, but there's a few things I found out I didn't know, and he was just acting certain ways, and I just didn't want to travel with him anymore. But that didn't happen until after the incident and all that stuff.
Right.
Some of it happened actually on this tour, where is something else, and I'll leave that for another day. There was a few incidents where he let's just say me and him we had a strained relationship from then onwards. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Make a note because that might come up at one
Sure.
point. But at this point, we were still, because I don't really. It was only I'd just become the television champion, and I don't know if I had or not. It's near that time, and I've just been put with Bill Dundee in the June of this year. So it's only a few months later. So me and Bill leave our room, go across the hall, and we're not in the, we're certainly not staying in the Marriott or anything. We're staying in some, Motel 6 or whatever, or the La Quinta or whatever it is. And we go across the hall, knock on Colonel Parker, who tells this story far better than me. So if you ever get a chance to ask him, he can back this up exactly, but he tells it better than me because he's a better storyteller than me, because he's just fantastic at telling tales, right? And not tales when in lies. I mean, just telling stories. He's fantastic at telling stories. They say Colonel Parker opens the door and he says, just come in here for a second. Sid's in the bathroom. So as you walk in the door, the bathroom door is on the left-hand side.
All right.
You walk in, and then there's 2 double beds next to each other, and it's not a big room.
Right.
You know, there's just like a wooden like set of drawers and stuff there, and you know, typical hotel room,
Right. 2 beds and a window.
2 beds and a window.
Right.
But obviously the bathroom's enclosed. But you walk in, there's a little bit of a hallway, but that's where the door for the bathroom is. So I'm now stood with the door behind me, the front door and the bathroom door, and Colonel Parker's just talking and Bill's talking, and I'm stood there talking. I hear the bathroom door open and Sid walks out. Now, I've got no reason to think that there's anything going to happen. The next thing, I have no idea what possessed him to do this. Sid has grabbed me round the throat from behind.
Huh.
And he's gone, I've got him now. Well, that didn't last long. Because he's got his big daft head there with all that curly hair. So I've just grabbed his head, his hair, I've dragged him over the top of me, and I've stuck him in a grommet on the floor. And I'm like, got him in, and I'm in this split second that this is happening, he's going, Colonel Parker and Dundee are just horse laughing, just belly laughing, because it's happened too quick, right? And I've just, because he made them, don't, you know, first of all, it was, he's got me down the throat. Secondly, too late.
Right.
Hand on the air, and he's got all that curly hair, right? Hand on the air, just dragged him right over the top. He's gone bang on the floor, and then I've just gravitated.
Wow.
Right? So I've got him, and I'm just going, what on earth? And I'm talking to him like that. What on earth are you thinking? Like, just like, and he's going, like, so, and I said, don't be silly. Well, I've loosed him. Well, he's got to do, what he should have done was just sit on the bed and take it.
But he did it, did he?
And don't forget, we got no room here, right?
Right.
So where I'm stuck, is behind me is the actual corner of the bathroom and the hallway.
Okay.
And there's a bed right in front of me on the left-hand side, the first double bed. He's like gone down towards the window. He's like on the floor going, and he just bows up. Now he's a big fella, right? A lot bigger than, right? Big man. You couldn't write this, and I'm not making it up. It sounds like it's like something off a film. He just leaped at me, and I just went, move to the side, and he hit the wall. It's just went, it's like Wile E. Coyote. He just went, smashed on the wall, and then went, staggered back like Frankenstein and fell on top of the bed. So now I've jumped on top of the bed, because now I'm like, I've gone now.
Right.
I'm proper gone now, like his fella's trying to attack me. I've got on him, and I've hooked him, and I've got his, you know, my hand underneath the back of his head, and I've hooked into his armpit, and I'm dragging his head forward. I've got my hand ready to break his nose, and I'm ready to bite his ear off. Right? Because, again,
poor Sid.
Anybody who there's certain people, and I know because there's some stupid people in England who knew me when I was a teenager, who sort of go, whatever I've done in my career, that they seem to still, and I don't know, because I hear these things, right? Oh, what was he? It was just because they knew me when I was a teenage kid, and I was just at one point a scared little kid. Well, I wasn't. In fact, there's the one fella who goes around saying this. Not goes around saying it, but says he gets information from this other fellow who actually did used to put me through it. Seems to forget that this fellow who did put me through it, me and him became friends later, and he used to run a lot of security. And if there was any extra, like special security for anything, the first person he used to call was me. Because by the time I'm 19 and especially 20, I'm an handful. None of my friends in Blackpool would know that, because I'm the quietest person in the room. I don't need to go around doing all that, but I'm training with all these, you know, I'm around Dave and I'm around all these fellas, and I'm doing 1,000 squats a day and training, and
Right.
I've worked in clubs. I've seen a lot of things that people shouldn't see, and I'm not a 16-year-old anymore. Right?
Yeah,
From
it's like
everything you
that
know me,
scene in Goodfellas where
right,
you don't shine. You're
right.
not shining shoes anymore.
Right,
Like you don't have shine
exactly.
box
I'm
anymore.
not
Right.
sure. Yeah, and then unfortunately, there's so I still hear it. There's these. Well, what's he ever done? Well, you just look at the company I keep.
Right.
Right, the company and my friends in Blackpool who know me. I'm not interested. They sometimes I used to have to get into fights with people. Unless I'm drawn into it, I don't need to. I work security with them, but I'm not. Why? Because I'm in the wrestling and I don't want to get locked up. Not that I've ever walked away from anything. That's it. I've luckily never been in a situation where I've had to have any problem with any of them back there because of whatever. Maybe it's the people I'm with. I don't know what because my friends are my friends, but they know me as just quiet thing. In the wrestling, I had to be a bit more than that to survive in this, especially when you start going overseas and that whatever. Well, I was big, I was strong, I was fit, and I knew how to do, by training with the right people. I knew how to, if anybody give me the head or their arm or the leg, I can do something with it. And I'm not frightened of getting hurt because these people who spread these things about me occasionally, I hear these or have done for years. They're the ones who actually did me a favor and made me become what I became. Right. But I've never had, it's just, I keep out. I don't,
Right.
I've stopped my reputation. I don't have one. I'm telling you, it's all myth. But there's people think, oh, he does this or he does that. No, I didn't. I won't stand for anybody taking a liberty with me. And it's just always played out. So
And Sid had made a mistake at this
Sid had
point
made the
because
big
you
mistake.
were pissed off at this point. You were ready to fight.
And
Right.
I've got him. And so I've got him up and I've got him up. He's on the bed going, he's already smashed his head on the wall. I've already gravitated him, right? So his neck's all creamed. He's just bounced off the wall. He's on the bed. I've got him up. Imagine what's going through his head. There's the humiliation.
Right.
But now he's proper done in. And I'm got him and I'm gone. And I'm ready to break his nose and I'm ready to bite his ear. And I don't want that to sound cool because it's not. But that's
right.
It's not. It's finish this fella off quickly. And I'm not. This is going to sound bad because people who know me being very quiet. But this is if you see Sid's a big man, and I'm not going to mess about trying to have a let him get it. Now I've got my chance. Right. I'm not going to give him any leeway. Sure. I'm going to hurt him quickly because that's another thing that I was taught to do by a lot of good people, right? And it's like, don't be messing about doing all this. Put your jukes up stuff. Just grab hold of it. Get to it, right? And I hope nobody takes this out of context because I have no interest or anything in fighting. There's no interest. Never have had. Never tried to.
This was not a fight you chose.
No, this is not something that and it wasn't a fight. It was just somebody him thinking it. I don't know what. I don't know. I've never asked him because it was Sid,
Right.
And again, don't forget, 2 weeks later, he does that thing with On, and I don't see him I don't see him again till in the WWE a few years ago. I never saw Sid ever again. Right. Oh, I did actually. I saw him in 2000 in Memphis when I was there for a while, and he used to come in the same gym with me. And again, it was all forgotten about within. Right. But this is this particular night. So this afternoon, I've got Sid. I've got him hooked up. I'm ready to do him if I have to. But I've just whispered in his ear, don't be silly. And I felt all that, he knew he was not in a good place, but it's not helping with Colonel Parker, especially because he's got the world's greatest belly laugh, laughing his head off. Right. And Dundee's laughing his head off, and they're just on him. We get to the building so I loose him and it's all over. Right. And I said, Sid, shake hand, that's it, it's all over. Don't, but I'm just warned, don't ever do that to me again. I said it very politely, right? More of it, I'm going to be honest with you, more of it's just bluffing him out, right? Because I don't know, he could have, if he'd have hit me, he's a big fella. I don't know if, you know, we've there's a lot of stories going around, but if somebody as big as Sid sticks,
yeah, it just takes one lucky shot,
right on the chin.
Right, it's
you
over.
got a chance he'd have crippled. I'd be over. He'd knock me down. You know what I mean? He's a big man, and he's a big fella who trains all the time. He just doesn't know what he's doing. So we get to the building that night, right? And all of a sudden, Sid said, "Can we have a talk?" And he walks to the showers. Now, I've been around wrestling enough. Usually, if you say, "Let's go and walk in the showers," you go walk in the showers.
You're not going to talk.
It's not for talk. It's for a straightener.
Right.
Right. It's had to have a fight. I walk in. I go right, and I mean just bump. And I go from normal mode to
fight
bump
mode
in a second.
Right.
I'm not going to back down to him, and I already know that's another thing. Little things that may sound good, but once I knew what I've just done to him, I knew the strength of him. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I've just had hold of him and I've just played around with him, and he hasn't got up and punched me in the mouth. He hasn't done anything, so I know it's not his thing. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I've had a couple of hours.
I saw his heart. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We go in the shower, and he basically just goes, "Oh, can you teach me some of that stuff?" And I just went, like I went all stern, and I said, "No." I said, "Because you'll take liberties with people." I had to have the same conversation with another big man who supposedly was a big tough guy once, who I ended up having to show some stuff because Harley Race asked me to. And I didn't really like this fella too much because I thought he was a bully. And Harley Race asked me, and because it was Harley, I'm going to be vague about this, but this fella, I had to show him. Ollie asked me to show him stuff, and I said, "No, this is another big man that was around at that time." And I went and showed him because he was going to have a fight in Japan, and he was scared of it. And I had, let's just say
that's a short list, though, Mr. Regal.
Right.
Like go ahead.
Ollie Race asked me, and I said, "No, Ollie, he's a bully, and he'll take liberties with people." And he said, "Please, could you do it for me?" And I thought the world of Harley, and so I had to do that. So I knew the strength of him as well, and I knew he got by on being just taking liberties with people.
Right.
These are things that are just things that happened in the first few years, right? So anyway,
well, we're going to get
for another time. Can we just finish this bit with Sid?
Sure.
So I've said to Sid, right, let's not talk about this again, Sid. I'm talking about now, but unfortunately, that story got out. I said, "No, Sid, I'm not going to show you anything because you will take liberties. At your size, I've seen the way you knock extras about. You will take liberties with people. I'm not showing you anything." And that's how we left it. Well, 2 weeks later, Sid was gone. So that's that story. So this is, keep me on track because I know you want to say something, but I don't know if this has happened before the Sid thing, but I already knew enough about Sid and then meeting Booker T and Lash. So have you got to do one of your wonderful promotions now?
Well, it's one of our wonderful promotions. And I tell you, if you're looking for someone who will not take liberties with you, that's Carshield. And they make it easy and affordable to protect my car from expensive repairs. And that's just for starters. And it is time for you to know that Carshield is the #1 auto protection company in the U.S. and offers protection plans for around $100 a month. The plans cover more parts than ever before, whether your car has 5,000 miles or 150,000 miles. Let me tell you how simple it is to get your car fixed. When you need a repair, you choose the mechanic, and CarShield's administrators handle the rest. That's it. You don't have to deal with the paperwork or headaches, which apparently Sid had a few of by way of Mr. Regal. You are taken care of. Same goes if your car breaks down and you're stuck on the side of the road. Plans through Carshield also include coast-to-coast roadside assistance. Carshield administrators are there for you with rental car options and trip reimbursement at no extra cost, too. Get coverage today and you'll lock in your price now, and it will never go up. That means as long as you own your car, no matter how old it is, you're protected from the rising cost of parts and repairs for your vehicle. Carshield helps protect my wallet from expensive car repairs, and they'll do the same for you. Go to carshield.com/podcast to start your plan and lock in your pricing forever. That's carshield.com/podcast. A
Thank you very
deductible.
much, Carshield.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
Okay. Yes. So
And let me just say this, got to say it, the carshield.com/podcast. A deductible may apply. Now, Mr. Regal, you were
yes.
talking about now.
So
the
now
first time you ever saw
Sid
in WCW.
No. What I'm
And Booker
talking
T.
about, the first time is when I saw Sid and Harlem Heat.
Right.
So I'm walking into the Main Event Fitness gym with my wife. Sid comes walking out, and again, time frames of the story that we just told, and I'm not so sure about, but Sid was still around, and Sid wasn't around after the Arn incident, so it must be in 93. As I'm walking in, and there's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 steps, Sid comes walking out with Booker and Booker and Stevie Ray,
Sure.
so people know. And from me finding out later from both of them, Sid's got them all wound up, right? You know, to be, and they're both, Andy, you know, they've been through a lot in their lives. They've had tough lives, and they're, you know, they're a big pair of handful fella. You know what I mean? They're not going to back down with anything. They're both a big pair of fellas, right? And you know, they've gone through life, and I know what life's about. Well, they came out. Well, Sid's there, and I don't know what he'd like. You'd have to ask Booker, but he's told me that like Sid had them all like, oh, you know, like acting all like they're standing. So that I didn't pay. I quickly summed the situation, and I thought, well, I know my wife could take Sid out, but they're staring at me. We've never met. They're probably, you know, because a lot of it in this job is just fronting people up. They might have heard, or may not. They might not have even known me, but people met. You know, there's like myth. It's just whatever their thing is. They're stood above me on steps, and they're staring at me. Well, people don't do that around when my wife's around. I don't have anybody act strange around my wife, right? Which would lead to another story. But
you weren't about to have that.
I was just, my wife was there, right. And I won't let people swear around. I don't swear around ladies and children. I swear like a trooper when I'm with people I know, but I'm just, right. I'm funny about things, right? I'm very polite with ladies and open doors, and I don't like people swearing around ladies, and I'm just the way I am. So there's this brief second where they're both staring at me, but I'm more staring at Booker, and we just cross paths. And it just never seemed to get, we sort of went on from there. Whereas I quickly got to know Stevie Ray. So that was just our initial meeting. So there was no anything said, nothing. It was just a bit of a stare down, and okay, you know, I'm not backing down to either of you. And let's face facts. I mean, the two of them would have smashed me to pieces, right? Right.
Yeah, but you got to stand your ground. You know?
I'm going to stand my ground because I'm just not. It's not in me to not. So that was, it's been blown out of proportion. I've heard people tell that story where there was no, there wasn't. That was it. It was just a bit of a thing, and then Sid going, like, having a conversation with me still staring at Booker, him still staring at me, and then we just crossed paths. I didn't go any further with it because my wife's there.
Right.
Okay, that was it. We're going. So we ended up, I was on a lot of shows. Again, I got on very well with Stevie Ray. But finally, we got on, and then we ended up, like, following year, I ended up wrestling them a lot. And that Booker's not changed. And I get on, I've got on with him for years. But at this particular time, he was a bit loud for me.
Right.
And he knows that, and he's openly loud. Well, it's just, and there was a time, there's like, we were in WCW, and he used to just like to tell everybody how good he was all the time and how great he was. And he'll joke about this now, but he always used to keep saying, I'm top 5 in the world. And, I don't think I'm anything, but I was the fella that could go all over the world and wrestle anybody in the world.
Right.
Now that's the thing, right?
People, and that's also not a thing you would say.
No, but
ever. No.
And I don't think I ever, all these people who think they're the best wrestler in the world, it's just a fool's errand. Because if we've said that before, if one person thinks you're not, then you're not. It's as simple as that. So if you're chasing that goal, oh God, that must be. I'm glad I never had that. I just do me. But I know there's times when I can keep what I can do is I could keep up with anybody. And I could go all over the world and not talk to anybody and still manage to do. And I was doing that. I did that before I came to America. I could do it when I got here. And it's just having once from being a teenager, once I got to 20, 21, I could hang with, you're hanging with Fit Finlay and Mark Rocco at 18. You either hung in with them or you didn't have a job. And I'm still here. And that goes for something else we were talking about before. If anybody ever thinks, whatever, look at the company I keep. Right? Do you think they're going to have somebody who can't, they don't think?
Yeah,
I'll leave it there.
Probably not.
I hang around with the fellas who are whatever they are. You don't get to hang around with these fellas or be as close to these fellas if they think you're going to run off at the slightest opportunity or not be able to, if they were at the backs to the wall, if you weren't going to stand with them. And I've been like that with those fellas since I was in my late teens. That's all I need to say. Just look at the company I keep, right? Absolutely. I don't think I'm anything when it comes to whatever people think about me, but my friends are
your friends.
And they're all handfuls.
For sure.
Again, it's a weird thing.
Well, the company you keep.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to segue and just say that your inauspicious first meeting with Booker, and fast forward 14 years, and the company you keep on screen ends up being Booker T and his court.
Yeah.
And
what was great with us was once we started wrestling together, we had fantastic chemistry.
Right, because
and we always got
in the ring was quite a talent. Very early
fantastic.
On, you could tell he was special. As a fan,
fantastic.
You're like, who is that guy right there?
Absolutely,
like he's great,
fantastic.
Right.
So it was, there was never any bad things with me and him. It was just that, like, do me a favor, just stop going on about yourself. That kind of a thing with me when I was younger, because I was, and this. He'll laugh about it now, but he used to be always, I'm top 5 in the world, and I'm going, hang on, you've only wrestled in Dallas and a few
Georgia.
shows and a few shows, and I've been all over the world, and I've wrestled all these. You're just coming into the, you might get offended by this, but okay, so you've wrestled in Texas a bit, and you've wrestled in, you've done a couple of trips to Japan. Well, that don't make you. Don't start throwing that that
Right.
you're very good and you're excellent, and you know I know that, but you don't have to keep going on about it. You know what I mean? Like it's just that was one of the things. It's just me. I'm just not a loud person, and I just don't. I just want to, you know, I'll tell stories and whatever, but don't keep going on about it. And that became a bit of afterwards. It became a running like a joke with us because we got again. It was just initial few years that we were, but whenever we did anything with me and Bobby, any of the Blue Blood stuff, and that was
All
gone on
professional.
fantastically, all professional. But in real life, there was times when we were, because of different day and age, if we were ever out in public, there's times when we used to, I remember one night before something we were doing, we were in a bar somewhere and we just happened to be in the same place and he was there and it's something, and we sort of created a scene because we wanted people to buy into what we did.
Right.
And I don't know if he was doing it I was just doing it to make sure people like just grab people's attention, because that was a thing that came from, you know, for many years, you know, like you just got to keep, again, we've talked about the strength of the job.
Right.
Well, he's there and I think we were wrestling him the next day. Well, he's something, he might remember that better than me, but there was something that was just a bit of a, and then the doorman got involved and like we just sort of left and that, but it wasn't a reality thing, but it was just the way we were, and we weren't going to expose our job or our whatever we had going on in front of a bar full of people.
Right.
And unfortunately, it became more of a thing than it needed to be. And he might remember that. But going on to, so there'd been that little bit of stuff at the beginning, and it was really nothing much.
Right.
But it was just that, and he still is, and I'll still say he's still too loud sometimes. And I think, well, you know, like we get on really well, but he's just loud, right? And he gets a bit loud, and he gets a bit just over the top, and it's just, and I just
right.
So, but with Stevie, it was the exact opposite. Me and Stevie always got on really well. So,
do you remember who first pitched you on being a member of King Booker's Court, the town crier?
No. And I was just asked to do it. And I went out, and we've talked about this before. Whatever you get given, make it work.
Right.
And I can't remember who pitched that to me, and somebody else might know that, whoever, you know, was around the writing team or whoever was in charge. I can't remember at that time. It's not that I can't, it's just, if you're talent, there's a whole group of people organizing stuff and working themselves to the bone to create a show. I've always, I won't say prided myself, but that's one of the things that I like to think. I'm the easiest person you're ever going to have to deal with. I'm a professional. I understand this job. I haven't got a big ego. I'm what you need. Yep, I'll go and try and make it work. That was the way I was, right? So whoever came up to me and said, "Go and do that," right? I wasn't doing anything at the time. It must have been, I don't know, because I had here's my deal with Mr. McMahon. When I went back in 2000, Mr. McMahon said to me, because he talked to me, again, we were never over friendly, but we had grown-up conversations. And he put on, again, he figured out that I'm not an ego merchant. I'm not trying to, I'm a professional and I do my job. Whenever I have a good role for you, you'll be in it. And if not, you'll be working on house shows and you'll be maybe, you know, making people look good, wrestling younger talent, but you will constantly be working. So, and if you look at my WWE career, that's exactly how it worked out. I have some incredibly memorable, if you take them as bodies of work, of memorable things, Commissioner, all the comedy stuff, Bookers, this thing that we're talking about now, I was just, they never had to even there might have been 50 people know before me that day. And I don't remember anybody coming up to me until that. And I can't even remember them coming up to me that day. You know, like, because they know I would do it, and they know that I would give it my best, and they know that I had a track record of, from, again, let's forget 1998, but from 2000 onwards, I had a track record of whatever they asked me to do, I just did it, and I had trust. And I was no problem to them. Zero problem. What do you need? Yep. Okay, thanks. Bosh, done. So somebody came up to me and said, and it could have been 5 minutes before, for all I can remember. I don't know. Somebody else might know. I was just said, can you go out and do this? And you'd have to look either side of my career, what I was doing at the time. It may have been something, it may have been nothing. I don't know. Can you do this? Of course I can. Go out and start doing that. And I did it until I couldn't do another one. And that's what I think, why it started, because they said, go out and be his town crier. I can't remember who delivered it to me or what to do. I just did what I thought was right, because Booker had created this incredible character, and he was, you know, you'd have to ask him about that, but he'd created this fantastic, he got the King of the Ring thing, and he was going to make it work. He was going to make that work, and it was a tremendous thing. And I was asked to just go out and do that, and I've got no hang-ups about doing anything. Go out and just start doing the King Booker thing. And it just went on and on and on, and the cameras were on. So I kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going until my voice was going hoarse, until finally the cameraman went, okay, we're off the air. And then I walked through, and then that's how it started. As far as I know. Other people may know that they had me slotted in for something. That's how it, again, it's information they never needed to worry about telling me.
Right, because you're a team player.
Because I just do what I've got to do. So that's how it started, was one night, me doing that. There was nothing before that, I know that. And it was that King Booker, and then we were paired together, and you'll be able to tell me more than me. Because again, a lot of this stuff is just another day at work for me. Because I'm not up my own backside, because I haven't got pictures all over the walls of what I do, because it's just another day and another great role. I'm going to be with this now. Great. It gives me something to work, to be a part of, and I'm going to make it work. And I know Booker. I know how good he is. I know how good he's going to make this work, because he's the same. Give him anything, he's going to make it work. Right? We're both on the same kind of mindset.
Sure.
So it's just, let's go out and have some fun and make this work. And I'll just react off him. This is his role. I'm not an ego man again, so I'm not going to go, oh, well, I need to get this in. No, I'll just react off you. And we've talked about this before, but I'll just react off you, and I'll do whatever. I am totally comfortable with myself. I think we've talked just from,
you're confident
in today's podcast. You've seen the kind we've talked about, just certain things that shows you that I'm not. What have I got to prove to anybody?
Right.
I'm not having to prove that I'm any kind of anything. That's what holds a lot of people back, because they never become comfortable with themselves. They're always trying to, like, they're insecure, and they have to try to prove a point, or prove that they're tough, or prove that they're not, they're frightened of making a fool of themselves. I couldn't care less about making a fool of myself, because I know enough tricks to pull it back.
Right.
I purposely used to make a fool of myself to be able to turn it round on people and have them booing me straight afterwards. I would do that. That was part of my act, to make a fool of myself, because I know that feeling. And everybody in the audience, you learn when it's crowd psychology. If you can connect on a level that the audience can feel, everybody in the building knows what it's like to be humiliated in front of somebody at some point in their life, and you want to lash out and you want to do, but you can't. Well, I could do that in wrestling. I knew that. I've, you know, through different things in life, when those embarrassing things happen, and you just thought, oh, I just want the ground to swallow me. Well, I could actually create a scenario where I could make myself look completely ridiculous.
Right.
But then I could turn it round and go from, oh, you were laughing at me, and you go, well, now he's going to take. I wished it was you, but this poor person I'm on with, now that I've took command, you know, now that I've taken control of this match, he's going to get it.
Right.
And I wished it was you, and I wished it was you on the very back row, and I wished it was you, but he's going to get it. And I would pound on, and then, woof, I was so comfortable with myself about before, even probably by the end of the first year, I was comfortable with being a wrestler before I came to America. By the end of the first year of me being here, doing so much, because I was the TV champion, so much stuff, and being around so many great people, there was nothing that you couldn't ask me to do that I couldn't pull off.
Right.
As long as I knew that, but I also knew what I could and couldn't do. And so I would adapt to this or adapt to that.
Well, let me ask you this about this time. You were part of the King's Court, and somebody that you were feuding with a lot, someone you had matches with, someone you saw wrestle a lot, was in 2006 was a young Bobby Lashley. What were your and of course Bobby Lashley is going stronger than ever now. He's just,
can I just say this?
Sure,
because
I was going to ask what your first impressions were,
right.
but
first of all, I liked him. He was just a lovely, polite, lovely fella, and obviously, you know, there's only been 2 times in my life when I've ever felt, let me say, from probably being 19 onwards. When I was younger, I could, you know, people, it was getting a bit different once I was getting near me later when I was 18. And with all these things of having people around me that were saying, look, don't let anybody take liberties with you. There could a lot of people, and still could, take liberties with me if they wanted. But again, it was fronting people up and stuff. But there's only been 2 times in my life when I've felt completely helpless in the ring. And these were when I was growing up, right? And knew whatever I knew. One was one of the first time I wrestled Bobby. And he, without meaning it, I just whatever, he grabbed me and threw me. So there was nothing I could have done to stop myself flying from one side of the ring to the other, let's put it that way. And I just realized this man's just in a different league, right? I never wrestled Brock, and I'm sure Brock could have done the same. But I also know a lot of tricks to stop people but I wasn't expecting that. I said something to him, you know, just throw me. And before I knew it, I was on the other side of the ring. And I was going, oh, my, this fella's in a different ring. The only other time was I wrestled in 1992. I went to Egypt and I wrestled a fella called Klaus Vallis. Klaus Vallis was a silver, super heavyweight, silver medalist judo player in the Olympics. And was also rated in the top, I think it was 5 people of the world's strongest man. And he used to be a wrestler for Otto Vance's company, and he hadn't wrestled for 5 years. And his first match back after 5 years in Egypt was against me. And he's a huge man, and he wasn't meaning to do this, but he does all those judo, and because he just hadn't wrestled for 5 years, hadn't done any pro wrestling, but he was training, and he was just a huge, strong man. Right, I mean, proper, massive, huge, and he just grabbing hold of me and going into instinct because he was trying to remember what to do as a pro wrestler. Boom! Just like, you know, them judo fellas in a different league.
Sure,
they can just throw you from, you know, ourselves at breakfast time, right? It's just boom, and I'm hitting the floor, and he's going, "I'm sorry," and he was in his Austrian accent. I'm so sorry, darling. I'm so boom. All right. And I'm trying to grab onto things because I know how to stop people throwing me about.
Right.
But it was just too fast and too quick because they're you know, they're in a different level of athletes. So I got to wrestle Bobby a lot. Bobby came up to me when I was doing a tryout at SummerSlam last year. Bobby actually came up to me and said, I want to thank you. And I'm watching the tryout people, and I said, hey, Bob, how you doing? Nice to see you. I hadn't seen him for a while because obviously I was down in NXT. Hey, Bobby, how you doing? Nice to see you. You're doing well. And I really am, because I always liked Bobby. Really nice lad. Really lovely fella. Really lovely fella. I said, I'm glad to see you doing well. You know, you're back and doing well and everything. And he went, I just want to thank you. And I said, well, first of all, you never have to thank me for anything, but, you know, okay. And he said, no, I want to thank you. He said, I had it easy. He said, my first year on the road, which I believe was 2006, he said, I wrestled, and he had the exact figures. He said, I wrestled you 60, I forget what he said, 60 something times, and I wrestled Fit 60 something times. And he said, you just he said, in that year, I just learned everything. That's one of those things that I feel really bad for now for the younger talent, because this is somebody coming into the job and getting to wrestle. You know, I am what I am, but I know what I'm doing. He got 120 something matches in 1 year against Fit Finlay and William Regal. Who gets that now?
Right. Those reps, huh?
That reps against people who've been doing this for a lifetime.
Right.
And it just, that's one of the things. So yes, Bobby, that's why, another thing with the BCC, that's what we really try, because we all understand we got to where we got to by having reps against good people, or having to figure it out, or finally finding people, or people helping us along the way, and we want to give back. But how do you give back to like you've got right wrestle us, and it's going to be worth a minimum, if not 1,000 matches, it might be worth a minimum of 100, that you've got to wrestle somebody of that caliber quickly. And so that's where that's a real thing. And that was something going into this that I've kept in my mind, what Bobby said to me last year about how he said, how fortunate was I to get to wrestle you and Fit 120 odd times in a year, which on live events, not just TV, on live events. So you're just getting rep after rep with people who can move you into position, and to, oh no, don't do that yet, don't do this yet, no, to listen to the people, that all those things that we were both passed on, but through people teaching us, we got to pass them on and help him.
Well, Mr. Regal, if you want to watch people get a lot of reps, what I do is I go to IWTV.LIVE. It's something my son and I have subscribed to for years. It's independent wrestling's premier streaming service for live events and video on demand of past events. For just $10 a month, IWTV.LIVE offers 20 plus events stream live each month from top independent wrestling promotions such as ICW No Holds Barred, West Coast Pro, and Limitless Wrestling. Additionally, as an IWTV.LIVE subscriber, you have immediate access to the extensive library of over 13,000 hours of video on demand content from over 300 independent wrestling promotions from around the world, including Beyond Wrestling, Prestige Wrestling, Absolute Intense Wrestling, and H2O. And it's true, my son was on this before I was. And he's like, Dad, you got to check out this guy or that guy. And these guys are the guys that you'll see on IWTV.LIVE. The extensive library features wrestling superstars such as Orange Cassidy, Jonathan Gresham, Masha Slamovich, Eddie Kingston, and Wheeler Yuta. I think you know something about that fella, Mr. Regal.
Just a little.
Yeah, I tell you, you can watch IWTV.LIVE anytime, anywhere. It's available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV Stick. I watched it on Roku, but you can also use the mobile apps for Apple or Android devices. No long-term contracts required. Go to IWTV.LIVE and subscribe today for just $10 a month. Now, Mr. Regal, you're part of King Booker's Court.
Right.
You're the town crier. And
yes.
and who else is part of that? I guess you'd say menagerie of wonderful personalities. Then your old friend Fit Finlay. What was it like working with Fit in this? Two guys who beat the hell out of each other around the world, really. And now you are playing a whole different role. You're playing a different character. You're serving a different service for wrestling. What was that like for you two at this point in your lives to be together
Well,
doing
it's
this?
just second nature to us to just go out and do a thing, right? So it was, I mean, whatever the few times that we did tags and stuff, I always would have liked to have had a run as a tag team with Fit. If you ever see any of the stuff that we did, which is sometimes tags and what, me and him together have excellent chemistry. We can just look at each other and again, see, I was watching him from being a teenager before I even knew him, watching him wrestle with Skull Murphy as a tag team and watching him wrestle with Rocky Moran as a tag team. And so all these things, and on top of all the wrestling that we've done, we were just an excellent tag team together. And we could, looking back, we could have been a serious force as a tag team.
For sure.
But we had a lot of, we just don't have to think about it. It's like wrestling each other. We just played off each other. I wish that there was more to say about some of these topics, because that's a lot of these. It's like talking about the Blue Bloods. We just had instant chemistry, and there was no. It was just another day at work to go out and do our jobs, and luckily we've got great chemistry, and we had great chemistry with Booker, and we had wonderful chemistry with Sharmell, and it just worked, and it was a great piece of body of work in itself.
It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Two young fellas who grew up in the British wrestling system where you didn't really talk much, you didn't do promos, and then Booker, who played an entirely different character his entire career, and then now all three of you.
Am I right in saying that he based that off Idi Amin?
I'm not sure. The voice may
I
have come from hanging out with you.
There was a movie out at the time. I could be wrong here, and this is he's got his own podcast. So if I don't suppose he'll listen to this, but if he might be able to tell you more, or somebody needs to ask him that question. There was a movie out at the time with Forrest Whitaker playing Idi Amin, I believe, and he just put there was a bit of everything in there, but I think I just remember overhearing something, and it could be completely wrong, but there was something about that. It became more of a flamboyant. It was wonderful. He just did an incredible job of that and made the most of it. And Sharmell was just perfect fit for that. She's a lovely lady, and I'd known Sharmell from when I was in WCW, because she used to be in the Nitro Girls. So we always, the four of us it just worked. It just absolutely worked, and for it was a great thing.
Well, for sure. I guess what I was getting to is, you guys not doing much promo stuff in England, you coming over and doing a lot of stuff in WCW, but now you're having to create characters, you're having to talk, and you've talked a lot about you're just doing the job. What is it that made it easier for you and Finlay and even Booker to kind of adjust to these, adjust these requirements where other people kind of struggle to do that kind of thing, to bring a character to the front as opposed to just in-ring excellence?
Okay, well, first of all, the three of us have all lived life, so we've got a lot of experiences we can just draw off. Everybody's different. They've all got their own ways of going into things. With me, I'm happy to play a role. Again, I was the one who was the sniveling, sucking up, just the whatever I had to be to as 100 movies that I've seen.
Just as hateable.
Just this, like,
it's the guy you want to punch in the face.
Yes, and I never even thought twice about it. I just, as soon as I was doing that, because I know Fit's not going to be doing that. That's not Fit's range.
Right.
So I never even thought twice about it. It's not like we sat. I can't ever remember sitting with Booker and Fit and actually saying, right, you do this, you do that. Not one time. Not one time did I that I can remember, that maybe Booker can, that we actually sat down and said, right, this is how we're going to play this. But when you got three pros who quite comfortable with themselves and know how to do the jobs, we just went out and that's hard, really hard for people to understand. Or I wished I could give you some more insight. I wish there was more to it, because then it might help some talent, young talent. Oh, because they did this. No, we just went out and just did us.
Right.
I did me, Booker did Booker, Sharmell did Sharmell, Fit was Fit. And we all just reacted off each other. And that was it. Never had to be, I can't remember any instructions or any kind of guidance. Just go out and do your thing. Which is most of the things that I've ever done, with the exception of certain times with Mr. McMahon has told me different. Usually only Mr. McMahon would pull me and say, Darren, I want you to do it like this. And then, okay, thanks, boss. And then I'd go. That's it. And then that's that. You know, when I say about that was as much as we ever needed to talk.
Right.
As long as he just gave me his vision, I understood what he needed. And if it wasn't right when I came back, he'd say, can you just do it a little bit more like that? Yep. And that was it. That was most of my, from 2000 onwards career, whenever I did anything. He just would say certain things to me. I might have come through and he'd just go, like me doing the Booker, the King Booker thing on the first day. And then he just knows I'm going to, because don't forget, Mr. McMahon has done so many. If you go back and look at so many backstage vignettes with me,
sure,
and knows that we just used to knock them out in one and just do them. And there's if you just put that together and put just William Regal and Vince McMahon back vignettes together, there's so many of them, and we just reacted off each other. So he knows that I can just do that. He hasn't got or occasional bit of guidance, right? There's the occasional bit of guidance. I want you to just, maybe this. I can't remember him telling me anything with that role. There's times that I'll be honest with you, I wish he'd have given me more guidance. No, because there's obviously times when things didn't quite. No, they all worked out. but if no, when I look at it, no. But right. There is times when I wished he would have told me off a bit more. He didn't. There's times when I needed telling off. Right. If he'd have said it, I'd have listened to him because he's my boss, and I'd listen to him. I wished he'd have grabbed hold of me in 1998 and shook me by the throat against the wall and smarten up, you idiot.
Right.
But that is that neither here nor there. We ended up back in 2000, and it did nothing but gave me incredible roles to do. Well, every time, and we're going to get into some of that here now, because there's the stuff that I was doing where, again, he doesn't have to worry about me not being trying to act like a tough guy, or he knows I will make the most, and they just trusted me with whatever, because I've done. I'm comfortable with myself, and I've got, whether they know it or not, I have got a head full of, because I've just nothing, and still doing it now, because I'm going back through it again, just all old British things, and I can get, or comedians or whatever, because I never know when I'm going to need it. So I've got a brain full of this stuff and all the wrestling stuff I've got on top. Right. You haven't got the ego to worry about. You've got a professional mindset here.
Sure.
And that's when you hear anybody complaining, no, That's how my career was. Right. I had a couple of times that I can remember when he's just gone, Darren, can you just do it a bit more like that? Yep, thanks, boss. But boom, and it's done.
Right.
Because he's seen me he's seen me all kinds of ranges backstage, or seen the show and why it's been going on, and sent, you know, he's not there, but he's seen me doing all these vignettes and doing these promos and that. He's got. I had so much trust there to just be able to pull off anything,
Right.
and whatever I was given. And I think he also knew what I could and couldn't do. So don't ask me to do. I don't think he ever did. You know, he's got a good. He had at certain times when he said, "I'm going to take," or I heard, right, we're getting out of this role, and that was the one time when and then I learned we're going to take out of this, and I asked the question, why are we leaving this role? Well, I want you to do this, which was actually go into a program with Edge to make him look that he can take a beating, and two, this role is doing incredibly well at the moment. Let's get out of it before it runs its course, because if we can always revisit it. That's something he taught me. Get out before it runs its course so it doesn't become stale. And so that was early on. And then from then onwards, it was just, I think the only other time that I remember having a talk with him was the first day of HDTV, and he called me over and said, I want you. He just called me over to rings. I was in the ring, and he went, I want this HD is going to be completely different. Instead of the big faces, can you pull it in?
Right. Dial it back a little bit.
Dial it back and just little nostril flares and that. And I went, yep. And we did it. And I never heard, if I didn't hear anything, because I never went up to him going, is that okay, boss? Right. Like everybody else does.
Right.
Because I don't need, you know, if I didn't get told off, I knew I'd done okay.
Right.
If I didn't get that. So I didn't bother him because he's got a million things to do.
Oh, sure.
If I walk through the curtain, I just go, thanks to whoever I've got to, but I'm not going to go, which a lot of people do, go up to him. I don't need to, because I know he'll have sent for me if I'd have done something wrong. So I know I'm doing right.
Right.
That's a very trusted and great position to have.
For sure.
So with the King Booker thing, all of it worked as far as I'm concerned. And then there was what I consider if you want to know anything about my career, or sum my career up of what I can do in its entirety, was the pay-per-view where I ended up doing it was all leading up to the split up with Booker.
Right.
Because in that one pay-per-view, I got to show the comedy chops, the character, the comedy chops, expose myself on live TV, on a live pay-per-view, which wasn't supposed to happen. And you know, that's another, I don't know if you know that, but me doing all the things that I've done, basically that pay-per-view sums up. If you want to know my range of what I can do, that one pay-per-view, whatever it's called, and that when I wrestled Chris Benoit on there, that at the end of it, I knocked Booker, I hit Booker, and that was the end of the King Booker's court. That one pay-per-view was basically, the whole show was based around me doing different, not about me, but I mean, I was in so many different things, but it showed all my comedy range, it showed my serious wrestling range, and a lot of things in between. So you might have the name of that in front of you. And that was the end of the King Booker stuff, as far as I remember.
Well, I think the match the pay-per-view you're talking about, I think it's No Mercy.
No Mercy.
Yeah. But I want to ask you real quick, you know, we talked about Booker, we talked about Sharmell, about Fit Finlay. There's another member of Booker's court I want to ask you about, and that is Hornswoggle.
Oh dear.
Hornswoggle.
Now this is where we could get taken off the air forever.
Yeah, you're not kidding. What were your thoughts about working with Hornswoggle?
Well, little people, I've had not the greatest experience. This is going to.
How big? How much of a factor were little people in England in the
Okay.
matches? Like you talked about,
Oh,
the
there was a
women's matches haven't really been
right. There was a
documented
troop.
the way they were. Did they have the same kind of thing in
There
England?
was a troop. There was a troop of a small troop of little people in England. It's okay to still call people dwarfs?
You
I
know,
do know the difference because I have been around a lot of little
I know
people.
the difference because Swoggle explained the difference to me.
Right.
You know, he
Well,
said he doesn't mind the M word, but a lot of people do.
do and
But
sure and rightly so. Do you right? So
he's technically a dwarf because he has a full-size torso.
nearly everybody
Yeah,
is a dwarf unless
yeah,
they have. There's different.
right,
It's just different types of dwarfism.
right.
He is whatever the specific, and I'm sorry if I'm not trying to offend anybody,
Sure.
but everybody, sometimes people use the M word,
Right.
which is a wrong word. That is a word that was made up by P.T. Barnum for Tom Thumb.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
See, you're going to learn all kinds
Look
from
at
me.
that. Look at that.
That is the wrong word. I don't use that word.
Like he said, he wasn't offended by it, but he
He
said
wasn't offended because it
many
made him
people
money.
are, though. Many people
Yes.
are. Yeah.
But we're talking about Hornswoggle. This is the man who's got, there's a little people conference every year. He's been barred from it twice for being drunk and disorderly.
He
And he
likes to have
won't
a
mind
good
me
time,
saying
the
that, right?
Hornswoggle. Yeah, he
Right.
likes to have a good time.
I've put him to bed on more tours. Because I used to just go, like my going out days were over when I got to the WWE. So we'd be all over the world on these different tours, and we'd be in these hotels, and I couldn't sleep. We've gone through some of that. What reasons why I wasn't a good sleeper? About whenever I thought it was time, I would go for a wander round, and I would go into the bar because there was everybody and the fans, and they thought it was funny to overindulge him in his drink, and I would just put my hand out and say, right, Dylan, it's time for bed. And he would take my hand, and I would walk into his bedroom, and I would put him in his bed, and I would prop him up in bed with two pillars like the Elephant Man, because I always thought if his head went down he might choke.
Right.
I have
Right.
put him to bed, and every night he used to, sometimes be in some not good states, he used to hug me and go, I love you, Mr. Regal. And that was how I'd put, that was a regular thing for me on many, many tours, because everybody else was doing their thing, and I didn't like it. I didn't think it was funny giving him, because he did, and he would, and be doing a lot of, and he's done his own thing.
He was a pretty young man at the time too.
He was a young man. I used to look after him,
right.
and because I worried about him, because he was getting, again.
Right.
Let me backtrack. When I was 17, I got put in. There was only a few wrestling little people in Britain. One of them was the biggest. I'm not sure if he's alive. David. He was from a guy from Lincoln, and I forget what he used to wrestle as. Because, to be honest with you, he was a horrible, miserable swine.
Wow.
But he was the biggest dwarf I've ever met. He must have been 5'2" and weighed 300 pounds. But he was.
It's really stretching the definition, isn't it?
He was a miserable, horrible. Well, at 17, I was working for Worldwide Wrestling Promotions, and they came. You'd have, you've heard it in the American territories. They would come in they came for a week, and I got to meet and become very friendly with a fellow called Peter who used to wrestle. There was a Canadian wrestler called Big Mighty John Quinn, who wrestled in England and was a sensation in the 80s. Well, Peter was from Birmingham. He wrestled as Mini Quinn because he looked like John Quinn, but Peter was fitness fanatic. He had a great physique. He was a small gentleman, and he ended up, after a while, there wasn't a lot of wrestling for little people in England. He ended up, all of them, including this David, all the wrestling little people that I knew ended up working on that movie Willow with Warwick Davis because they
Oh
needed
wow, yeah,
lots of extras.
for
Well,
sure. Right.
because Peter, who was Mini Quinn, because he was fit, he ended up doing all the stunts. And from then onwards, for the next 20 odd years, he traveled the world as a stunt little person, sometimes all over the world. He also got whenever he wasn't in a movie, he had a full-time gig with Holiday on Ice. There was do you have that in America? It's like a touring company that like do,
Oh yeah, sure,
Holiday on Ice, right? They
sure.
where they
A lot of
they
the
go,
old Olympic skaters will get
yeah, yeah.
involved in this big,
Well, he
big
had a gig on that
extravaganza.
because
Yeah.
he was really fit. The three that I knew at the time, there was David. Oh, I can't remember what he worked at. There was Peter, Mini Quinn. They were the first two that I met when I was 17. Then there was Chris. Chris was from Birmingham as well, and he wrestled as Little Big Daddy or Little Daddy. He was very tiny and a little heavy. So that used to have Mini Quinn. Used to have Mini Quinn
He was
against.
very tiny and a little heavy.
Well, he was. He looked like a beach ball with an head.
Right, your little
Right.
Big Daddy.
Yeah, he was Little Big Daddy. So, and he was a lovely lad, lovely.
Right.
But I didn't meet him till later. Right. There was a promoter called Badger. From the, I don't know why he was called Badger, but he was called Badger, and Chris was married to Badger's daughter. Little Daddy was married to Badger's daughter, and so I can go on with these things, right? But so I didn't meet him till later, and he was then it was that was when you had those on, Mini Quinn against Mini Daddy. Oh, that was a big thing. But the odd man out here was the person who had the control over. David disappeared after a while. I don't know what happened to him. But I was 17, just turned 17. I got put in charge of looking on Bobby Barron's show. I had to look after this David, who was a right miserable get, and Mini Quinn. Well, I got on great with Peter, and for many years I used to see him, and we got on. I once, off topic or something, a couple of years later, I get to I've got a Brian Dixon show, an all-star show. I get there to the meet. We got to meet somewhere, and there's a van pulls up, like a proper van, and Peter, who's Mini Quinn, he's driving it, and it's with Chris, Little Daddy, and I had to sit in them, and they've got like the pedals on the seats and everything. I had to drive to Newcastle, which was a hell of a ride with two little people, and I'm like, just like scared to death the whole way because he can barely touch. He's got like extensions on the pedals anyway.
Right.
Just as another day in my world.
Yeah, for sure.
But David, unfortunately, because David was a right miserable get, I had to look after it. Like they came on, and Bobby Barron, because I was the apprentice wrestler, you make sure that, and he used the word, I'm sorry if, I know you can't use this anymore, but this is from its date. This is 1985. You got to look after the M people,
Right.
because that's what everybody called them then.
Sure.
I was a bit more educated because I just not left school, so I understood that's not a word, and I knew where that came from, and that they were all considered, they were dwarfs, so they were dwarfs. Right. I know little people is the term now, but at the time it was dwarf. I try never to use the M word. I know Dylan doesn't mind it, Hornswoggle. Right. But so now I'm 17 before I've met my wife. We're doing wrestling shows, and next door to where we've just wrestled, there's a pool hall, and all the fans are in there. Well, there's another time for another story, but there was a lot of older young ladies like to 17-year-old me, right? I'm not going to deny that. I've written about that in my book, right? And I was a wrestler, and I was living away from home. So there was a lot of nice, ladies in there, and I don't play pool. And Peter, this fella who's 3'2", said to me, "Do you want a game of pool?" So I like, oh well, I'll beat him. So in front of all these ladies, well, in fact, the whole place, he thrashes me 10 games straight. just completely makes me look a complete idiot. So that was my start to the week, and it went on. So going on and on and on. I can go on and for a lot of time about this. We could do a whole podcast about my interactions with little people. End up with Hornswoggle. So now I'm dealing with him now.
Right.
Whenever I do meet Hornswoggle, he calls me Demon, and I call him Dwarf. Right. I just go, "Oh, hello, Dwarf," and he'll go, "Hello, Demon," and that's our introductions. And I hope that doesn't offend too many people, but it's just the way it is.
Right. That's what you call each other.
You know, it's the way. But I only started calling him that after I realised that he is what he is, and he's open. You know, people know enough about him. He's a bit of a rogue. That's why we get on a bit as well. He likes to get himself into trouble. So I was happy to do anything with Hornswoggle. I did, you know, I did stuff with Finlay, and there's one piece of film that it was on the end of a pay-per-view or like on a DVD where I open Finlay's bag and he jumps out and jumps around my neck and I'm spinning around with him and all. There's all kinds of bits of stuff of me and Hornswoggle doing. Somebody wants to drag those up because I keep we mentioned the Blue Bloods the other week. All of a sudden, all the Blue Blood stuff starts coming up.
Yes, sir.
If you can put together the Hornswoggle and William Regal stuff, any of you gift people, there's some. If you can find some of those, there's some really good ones. There's because when there was stuff that I was doing with them, Hornswoggle would come out, and there's times when he'd jump on me, and I would run along the entranceway. And I'd just spin round like that and him holding on my neck and I'd be selling it and doing all kinds of comedy with him. So I was happy to do all that as well. So there was all that going on live events. There was, when we were in that team, there was a lot of stuff going on with Hornswoggle, and I just loved doing it. The only one time that I felt it was a bit not right was the time that me and Finlay had to find we shouldn't have wrestled each other. And I believe it was something to do with Bobby. Bobby had some kind of illness or something on the afternoon. And they put me and Finlay on with each other, although we were in King Booker's court. And we thought, oh, we'll just get a new audience. We'll get to go out and do what we normally do and make them go, what's that? Because, you know, there's very few wrestlers can do what me and him can do together. But Mr. McMahon wanted some comedy with Dylan and it's still... We're still battering the hell out of each other, but there's little bits of comedy in there, and I just didn't think it needed it. If I watched it now, I'd probably... I didn't complain about it. I did it, but he ends up like my foot goes down the apron and he takes my boot off, and, you know, there's little things like that. But me and Fit thought, we're right at the beginning when we heard in the afternoon, Bobby's not going to be able to wrestle. You two we're going to make it where you two wrestle each other. Right, we get to show a new audience what Fit Finlay and William Regal can do. We're going to go out there and just leave a mark because they don't, you know, we hadn't been together for wrestling each other. And it's like, it's always a new audience, right? Every few years, a new audience. Let's go out and show them something different. And then we're still battering the hell out of it, you know, like we're still doing our thing, but there's comedy involved in it and whatever else. So anything else you have to ask with Dylan? I mean, I love Dylan, but I've had a long history of having to sort of babysit little people, which is probably another time not to get too deep into that.
Well, we'll get into Dylan a little bit more another time, and but one thing we can get into right now is that science tells us that the best way to achieve and maintain consistent deep sleep is by lowering core body temperature. Temperature-controlled sleep repairs muscle after a hard day's work and improves cognitive function, so you can always start your day feeling sharp and alert. And I'll tell you what, those days where you had to walk Dylan Hornswoggle to the room and put him to bed, he would have slept even better if he would have had Chilisleep. Isn't that right?
He would. Yes.
And because Chilisleep makes customizable climate-controlled sleep solutions that help you improve your entire well-being. Chilisleep makes the Uller and Cube sleep systems hydro-powered temperature-controlled mattress toppers that fit over your existing mattress to provide your ideal sleep temperature These luxury mattress pads keep your bed at the perfect temperature for deep sleep. I've heard you talk about this before, Mr. Regal. What is your perfect temperature for deep sleep you found through Chilisleep?
It's cold-heartedness of me, isn't it? I like 66.
Oh, that sounds
Ooh.
fantastic.
Ooh.
And your wife likes it a little warmer, right?
A little warmer, yes. I think she has it on like 68 or 69, 70. Well, she doesn't like it.
But now you can control
just
it.
Just saying she can't see me at the moment. You know, she's going through the moment.
Well, I'll tell you what.
So she gets a bit warmer, you know.
Regardless whether you're Mr. Regal or Mrs. Regal, whether you sleep hot or cold, these sleep systems are designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and give you the confidence and energy to power through your day.
Yes.
Imagine waking up and not feeling tired. Chilisleep can help make that happen. And also, for an extra layer of comfort, they also make the Chili blanket, the only weighted blanket that can also be paired with a control unit for the ultimate sweat-free sleep. Head over to chilisleep.com/regal to learn more and save 30% off the purchase of any new Cube or Uller sleep system.
Well worth it if you have trouble sleeping. It really is a wonderful product.
I don't know anybody who has it who doesn't swear by it. You and other friends of mine. And if you're a Gentleman Villain listener, you get an exclusive offer and only for a limited time, which is 30% off the purchase of any new Cube or Uller. And to get it, go to Chili, that's CHILI sleep.com/regal to take advantage of our exclusive discount and wake up refreshed every day. Now, Mr. Regal, we're going to go ahead and shoot to the end here of the experience with Booker's Court, and you talked about No Mercy, and we're talking about No Mercy 2006, and you said it really showed the breadth of what Mr. Regal can do. You had a hard-hitting match with Chris Benoit, but you also had a kind of a news-making backstage segment there, Mr. Regal. You know, what I see here and what I remember is you know, you were disgusted by Vito wearing a dress, and you know, and you got out of the shower. And
I saw him in the shower, and there's actually this was all done in one shot, and I saw him in the shower, and I just ad-libbed, you know, and I sort of looked down at his undercarriage. I can say that, can't I? Without
absolutely, undercarriage is totally acceptable.
And I went, "Good God, was your father a donkey?" Which is just, you know, me being me, and then I end up running out the shower with a towel around me. Now they've got the shots set up. I didn't, honestly, and believe me, I wouldn't want anybody to, you know, because you might be going, "Oh, hello, madam." You know, I mean, there's not. I don't claim to be, you know, that well endowed. So it's, you know, you wouldn't like it on your nose for a walk, but it's not exactly like something. It's not exactly like, you know, it's not like I'm going to walk around with nothing on or expose myself on TV.
Sure.
Because I'm 6'3" and it makes it, you know, it sometimes looks like a bit of Wrigley stuck to my belly. You know what I mean? So, so
but the towel did start falling off, right?
It did. Well, so I didn't know any of this until the next day. I get to TV, and one of the production ladies, I won't embarrass her because I always used to joke about this. She came up and they all started apologizing to me because it happened. I didn't know because we're doing this pay-per-view, and I've got, if you look at that pay-per-view, I've got like a ridiculous amount of segments to do. Right. So once it started, we did this shot, and then we got onto the next shot.
You're moving on. You're mentally not even there.
Not even there. And then I've got to have, I'll go out and have a match with Chris, and you know, and that comes with a lot of physical stuff. And so these were just the stuff that we were doing. I know we did the skipping thing, and there was all kinds of range in that. But the one bit I run out and I have to run up the corridor past the seamstresses with a towel round. I didn't realize that I got my tackle out, and it was on live TV. And so the next night they had to put They had to put like an apology on there, but I didn't know, and nor did I care once. You know, like so what? You know what I mean? Like I actually said, I hope you can in you know, me just being me and joking. You know, in anything that you put out from now on, can you like it, make it look a bit more like something. You know, like they're like apologizing. I'm just laughing about it because it's like, well, what can you do? You know what I mean? Like I haven't done it on purpose. Anybody who thought that was it? No, I did hear at the time people thought we'd done it on purpose. No, there is no way. That is one of the few things that I'm telling you now. There's nothing worth looking at. Believe me. You know what I mean?
I think that might be the.
If I was certain people that I could mention, I'd be walking around all day with it out. You know what I mean? Like, but not me. You know what I mean? It's not happening. So
well, we heard earlier about
it just happened.
We heard earlier about Colonel Robert Parker in the.
Goodness gracious me!
So what we're talking about, folks, is
you choke a dozen donkeys on that thing of his, couldn't you? You could. You really could. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think what Tony Schiavone said is you could jump rope.
You know that story of me, it's in my book, but I didn't tell. My first day in Hamburg, in Germany, in 1988, it's my big break, and we're in this tent, and it's 6-week tournament, and I'm getting changed. I'm 20 years old, right? Not long. And next to me, first behind me, is my great friend Teddy Rudge, who is a very, very funny man, right? And next to me is a fellow called Frans van Buiten. Frans van Buiten was an incredible wrestler. His son, Daniel van Buiten, still plays soccer, I believe, or he did. At one time, he was playing for Manchester City and was one of the highest paid soccer players in the world. I think he was on 100 grand a week. Well, I used to wrestle his dad. Well, his dad was a fitness freak. I'm 20. I'm sat on this bench. Like there's just these. You go to Germany and you think it's Chris Jericho's told about in his book, but you think it is a big break. But the tent wasn't. It like if you work for CWA, it was a big, beautiful circus tent. The one in Hamburg wasn't the most. It wasn't spectacular, and the changing rooms at the back were just benches, wooden benches with some like canvases to stop people seeing you, and there was a cold hose pipe. But it was still a big deal to me, and the money was a big deal. It was a big step. It was a big step up, and it was a 6-week deal, and you got spotted a lot from there to go to other things. You know, it was a big deal. Well, so I'm the very first day I'm there, and Frans van Buiten is next to me. Frans was always in incredible condition, and he looked a bit, for anybody who knows who, dating myself here, but he looked like Errol Flynn. He had this moustache and curly hair, and I didn't know him. Well, all of a sudden, I'm sat there, and he's took his trousers down. Well, this thing fell out that looked like Popeye's forearm. I've never, I was, oh my God. And I found me, you know, and Teddy already knows him, but he's obviously watching me looking, right? I'm just, Jesus. I'm starting to question now, am I the, you know, has somebody cut mine off when I was younger? Because it's certainly not like that. I mean, it's just this thing, right? And I know I don't like. I'm going to bleep myself on this, but Terry Rudge looked at it and looked at me, and he looked at it and he said, "I'd rather him than hit me on the head with it," which I think was the greatest one-liner I've ever heard. So. And then he said, and look at his, you know, his testicle. Yeah. I'm going to do it like that. No, and they're like a pair of coconuts hanging there, right? And I hadn't noticed them because the other thing was just like honestly.
Your attention was drawn. Yeah.
Right. It's like it could have, unbelievable.
Yeah. And
so now I'm Teddy's going, oh, look at them pair of bollocks, like, you know, it's just English term for I'm trying to be polite here. He said, look, he said, and this Terry Rogers, oh God, he was a funny man. And he just went, have you met his wife? And I went, No, he said, oh yeah, she's the one with the cauliflower arsehole. So I'll let you work that one out for yourself.
Well, on that note,
20 years of old, you wonder why I cared about anything. But I'd seen so
right.
much by the time I was 20. I'd
Yeah.
been around so much. That was the first trip that I just spent 6 weeks on living on the Reaper Barn in Hamburg. And I've had what a charm life I've had, which is the biggest red light area in the world. What a charm life I've had.
Sure. Well, let's bring this. That is quite a place to get cauliflowered. I'll tell you that much. That's
Right.
that's all I know. You know, in this pay-per-view, No Mercy 2006, of course,
Yeah.
we got to see the little Mr. Majesty of Mr. Regal as he ran down the hallway.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
then it was kind of a little convoluted, but it was you had to wrestle, and it was revealed to be Chris Benoit. You had a you had like 11 minutes. You had a great match. Was that something you knew was going to come, or
No. It was only decided on the afternoon because, and it's not my story to tell. There was somebody else who should have wrestled him, and it was decided that it was Chris's debut back. He'd been off for a while,
like 5 months.
Yes, it was Chris's debut back, and this character, who was a friend of mine, who became a big thing very quickly. But to put him on with Chris it was his first night. It would have been his first night, and it got delayed a little bit. To put him on with Chris on his first night, Chris is going to be Chris, and they put a lot of time into building this character up, and it was just a quick decision of, put Regal on with him instead of this fella, so we've spent too much time and money building up this fella.
We don't want him to get chopped to death on television.
Don't want it, or him not having a good show. Because Chris is going to go out. Plus, it's Chris's first night back. It should be beating somebody, and it should be about him.
Yeah.
And so that's how it ended up with me wrestling. That was just a call on the afternoon, and we never talked about anything. We just went out and did what we normally do, which was just go out and have a match.
Well, you're bloody from that match, from a headbutt from Mr. Benoit, and the main event of that pay-per-view is four-way between Finlay, Lashley, Batista, and Booker. And Booker confronts both of you and tells Finlay that he needs to lay down for Booker, and Finlay refuses after you had searched for him all day, and Booker slaps you for not doing your job. You punch him back, and that effectively ends the King's Court.
That ended that chapter, and it was ended perfectly, right at the right time. Again, it's one of those things with, if it was Mr. McMahon's call or somebody's call, get in, do it, play it out, and get out. And then you can. And again, we could have gone back to that at another time.
But leave them wanting more is a principle.
Leave them wanting more. So that's the Elvis thing, right? That's why Elvis never did an encore.
Yeah, I have these bands that want to do encores of stuff they haven't practiced. Right. And I said, no, you're having fun right now. Listen, just leave the stage, leave them wanting more, because they're going to want to come back, right? It's the same principle.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Booker's Court section of Mr. Regal's career, and brings us to the end of this episode of Gentleman Villain Podcast. We'd like to thank Steven Diaz, who did the video for us. Steve Kaufman wasn't available this taping. Also Wesley, who does the audio producing.
Thanks, fellas.
And everybody who's involved in the show. Yes. Dominic D'Angelo, and of course Dave Green, of course the research team of Derek Sabato and Richard Land, and of course it's been another great episode. We'd like to thank you for joining us and listening to another episode of the Gentleman Villain Podcast with William Regal.